Potatoes have been a food staple around the world for centuries, but which types grow best in the Northland? We'll tell you, and we take you on a tour to an amazing bonsai garden on this edition of Great Gardening.
Every tree has a moment when it shines.
That's called moneywort or creeping Jenny.
You can go in and do a rejuvenating pruning.
Forage and feed for our native pollinator population.
A garden really gives you peace of mind.
Hello and welcome to Great Gardening. I'm Pamela Fish and I'm joined by our resident experts, the esteemed horticulturist and St. Louis County educator Bob Olin, and the authority on Duluth flower gardening and president of Duluth Garden Flower Society, Tom Casper. Welcome. Thanks for being here again tonight.
Summer yesterday, fall today.
Yeah, isn't that true?
Yeah.
Boy, it's
What a
chilly
great
in the
spring,
Twin
though.
Ports, but in the outlying areas, it's still very nice, I understand. Well, tonight we're going to learn some things about growing one of my favorite foods, the potato.
One of my favorites too.
Do you like them?
I love
Do you favor the spud?
Yeah. I do prefer the spud.
Okay. Lots of good reasons. It's the vegetable of the year, as you know, in Duluth this year, and of course it's very versatile, and we have a lot of good information about it coming up.
Great crop for northeastern Minnesota. And, you know, for years we had a major commercial industry here because it's, of course, it's a cool season crop and it's well suited here.
Right, okay. Lots more to come on that. But right now, here's a look at tonight's phone volunteers from Duluth Garden Flower Society, Lake Superior Master Gardeners Club. And we hope you give them a call with some garden questions you've been seeking answers to. The numbers are there on your screen. Or you can email your questions to askgardening@wdse.org. Well, despite the fall-like temperatures here in the Twin Ports, it's beautiful out there. It has been gorgeous because of the trees and flowers that are in bloom all across the Northland. And we have an example right here. These are some tulips. Picture taken by Tom Casper.
Yeah.
Just this week.
That's right. Just a couple days ago, you know, depending on how close you are to the lake or protected areas, your tulips might just be coming into bloom. And in this case, they are just in full bloom right now and outstanding. And the lilacs are in bloom and the crab apples are in bloom. And
these tulips are gorgeous, Tom.
Yeah.
What kind are they?
That's a variety called Darwin. And they kind of have, you can see it's sort of a mix of heights and colors and things like that, and there's some mid and late bloomers in there, so it really will give me about 3 to 4 weeks of bloom time from that little crop of tulips. So
wonderful.
Great addition to the garden. So
And you know, we touched on the fact it's very cool here in town along the lake, but this does prolong the beauty of the bloom for a long period of time. The landscapes are lush and just gorgeous.
They are. Well, as is often the case, we don't always get through all of our questions every week, and we have some here from last week, so let's rip through a few before we get started on tonight's topic. This first one comes from Chris in Barnum, who has a bittersweet plant with both male and female parts that was sold that way, and it does flower well, but she wants to share new shoots with friends. Will those vines still flower?
She'll need both a male and female for bittersweet to produce the fruit, so she wants to make sure she has both of those. So,
and is she going to be able to tell?
Well, generally,
I mean, the one she has now is all growing together, and is blooming. So, is it going to be tricky for her to share that?
Yeah, it's going to be tricky.
It's going to be a challenge.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Trial and error, maybe.
There we go.
Okay. All right. Good luck, Chris. All right. Sally in Foxborough wants to know what can be done with witch's broom. I don't know what that is, but you guys probably do.
Yeah, witch's broom is just it's just an aggressive growth that occurs. It looks like a ball of plant material, and people often ask what causes it, and it can be caused by any number of items. It can be caused by virus, disease, insects. And what to do with it, we just generally cut it out and throw it away, discard it. It's not something that's going to be particularly contagious.
However, there are folks that go looking for those to collect, and really some of the new cultivated varieties or new interesting sort of unique varieties of plants that we're seeing were started as witches' brooms.
Okay.
So
I
there
have
is
heard that,
also
yes.
an interest in them too, as well as the removal of them.
Okay.
So.
Sally also wants to know what to do about rust on blueberries.
Oh, rust on blueberries. I wish I hadn't heard that because we didn't. We haven't had too much problem with it actually. With that pest, it's relatively benign. It's not going to do a lot of tissue damage, and I think I would just, rather than going to a spray program, be about the only option she'd have, I would just tolerate it and put up with it and try to encourage good growth. Separate those plants out if she hasn't, and if they're tightened, and even if they've been established for a while, because they have such a shallow root system, she can still move them apart and then do all the cultural things you can do to control these kinds of diseases, but rather than go to a spray program.
Okay, Carol from Duluth wants to know, and we talked about hollyhocks last week, but her question is, are they deer resistant?
Generally, I don't think anything is deer resistant, but
Unfortunately.
yeah, I've had issues or examples of where deer have gone after them, so they
Okay.
would not be one that I would completely recommend as deer resistant. So
Carol's also looking for an Old English or wild rose bush. Are those readily available?
generally not in the area specifically, but she can go to some of the different websites and find some beautiful old style roses, but really probably not finding it in the area. However, there is a plant sale this Saturday at the Rose Garden parking
There
lot,
is.
and the Rose Society, as one of the clubs within the organization, will be selling roses, so she could come down there Saturday morning.
Another quick one on hollyhocks. Can they be planted right now?
I would think so.
Okay.
Soil temperatures are warm, so you can seed just about anything at this point.
Okay, in just a good rich soil.
Good, rich, well-drained
Well-drained
soil.
soil.
As we said before, good sunny exposures, exceptional for them.
That's from Rita in Duluth and Diane in Virginia. No, wait. That was from Diane in Virginia. Rita in Duluth wants to know about Pachysandra.
Yep, Japanese spurge is also
Okay.
another name for it. Been
Is it
around for a
hardy
long
here?
time. It's probably hardy down closer to the lake, especially in the kind of winter that we had this past winter. So
Solid zone 4. Zone 3, I think you're going to have trouble with that. But it's a beautiful ground cover.
yeah, and acts in most years as an evergreen, so it will keep that green foliage year-round. Great shade-tolerant ground cover for folks that are looking for
So
something
if Rita
like
is close to the lake, she can give it a try?
Yep.
All right.
Or else protect it in the winter.
Right.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we need to move on and talk about potatoes. Once the lowly spud, potatoes have now been elevated to gourmet status, and with good reason. Here's a look at some excellent varieties for Northland Gardens.
We have a lot of potato varieties, and most of these are Irish potatoes, is a general term. And I'll show you just a few of our standards. This is probably a favorite for many, many people. This is a dark red Norland, extremely productive, beautiful white flesh, as well as the deep red skin on it. Then in terms of whites, and these are all really great mashers. These are nice waxy potatoes. They're a little different than Baker's. But this is a variety called Kennebec, which is an exceptionally good white potato for this area. And then for a baker, you notice this is a class of potatoes, of Irish potatoes, just a little bit different. This is considered a russet, and the russet Burbank is probably the most widely grown potato in the United States. And this is a variety called Gold Rush, which has performed extremely well for us in this area. So russets are really your best bakers. Now lately we've had just a great deal of interest and excitement about some of the gourmet or specialty potatoes. I think the trend kind of started with Yukon Gold, which had a nice yellow flesh. And then we get into some of the more exotics, some of the purple fleshed varieties. This is one called Russian Blue, and this is laced with the anthocyanin. This is the same antioxidant that's in blueberries. And then we've also got red flesh varieties. This is a variety called Adirondack Red, and they're just beautiful in my opinion. And this contains some of the lycopenes, which also is an antioxidant that is noted for certain types of disease prevention. The fingerlings get their name from the fact, of course, that they resemble a finger, and sometimes they can be a little bit larger than a finger or a thumb. but they have this same kind of oblong appearance. This is a Russian banana fingerling, which is one of my favorites. Another favorite of mine and other folks is really the French fingerling, which has a red skin, but it has this very unique color typically on the interior. There's some red pigmentation. One thing that you have to understand about specialty potatoes is one reason that they're going to always be more expensive. They don't yield very well compared to our other varieties. They're smaller, they take specialized equipment, or they have to be hand dug. So they're always going to have kind of a premium price, which is kind of one of the reasons why gardeners like to grow them. Minnesota, as well as other potato seed producing states, have got a certification process where they go through and try to eliminate as much disease potential as they possibly can. That's the downfall of a lot of potatoes. They can, over time, particularly if you're saving seed and so forth, they can develop certain types of diseases.
So that's why you should use certified seed, but Bob, a lot of people like to hold their potatoes over and reseed them.
You know, you certainly can do that if you've got proper storage conditions. And you should never, of course, try to overwinter anything that has evidence of disease. And sometimes you don't know, because sometimes it's down in the tuber. So from my perspective, you're better off starting with a qualified, certified disease-free stock to begin with.
Okay. All right.
Great tip, Bob.
Good information. We have more to come on growing potatoes, so we'll have more on that. But we want to get to some more questions right now. So, Diane in Proctor has a new plant, a ligularia, with no sign of growth. Is it just slow to come?
Well, ligularia is perennial. Also, the most common variety is called the rocket, which a lot of us are familiar with, gets 5 to 6 feet tall. But there's other varieties as well.
Dentata?
Dentata is a type of ligularia. It's not the rocket. That's more of a cordate kind of leaf on it. So more than likely, it is a Zone 4, and she's probably just outside of Zone 4 in Hermantown, and probably going to need to replace it at this point.
She's in Proctor, but probably outside of Zone 4 there too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, no, that's okay. But Proctor and Hermantown, sometimes, they don't want to be called one or the other.
Yeah.
Okay. Karen from Duluth wants to know, can we grow hellebores in our area?
Same kind of thing, Zone 4. And some years they're going to do great coming out of this past winter with little to no snow cover, probably struggling.
There was quite a bit of damage this last winter that people didn't expect because the winter was so mild, but we didn't have snow cover early, and we kind of jumped into, we didn't slowly decrease temperatures, we jumped into cold temperatures. I think that can be very damaging. So this was a good trial year, but there was a lot of materials that you might not suspect being a hardy that were really damaged.
Okay. Shirley from Duluth wants to plant a Colorado spruce as a privacy barrier, but heard about a spruce bugworm and is wondering, is this not a good choice?
Colorado spruce is a beautiful spruce because of its color, but it's probably not the best choice, and it's not the budworm. The budworm will attack all the spruce as well as balsam in particular, but the biggest problem is a lot of diseases associated with Colorado blues. Go with a Norway or go with a white spruce. Those are going to make wonderful privacy barriers, and you don't have any disease issues.
Okay.
And in the case of the white spruce or Black Hills variety of white spruce, a much faster grower than the Colorado as well.
Okay. Good for maybe a barrier area
Sure,
then?
absolutely.
Okay.
And they prune up real nicely, and people should be pruning those right now. We prune those first before we prune some of the pines and so forth. So they make great, if you want a nice dense tree, you want to prune them right now on those extending shoots because there's a number of buds that set and form, but this would be the time to prune the spruce up.
Great. Barbara from Carlton would like to know what ate the inside of her beets. She said the greens on top were great, but the beets were hollow in the middle.
Oh, completely hollow in the middle without any evidence of entry? We should ask.
I don't know that, but this is all the information I have.
Okay, that's all the information. Well, beets are vulnerable to a number of insect pests, is the reason I ask. And on the surface, they're vulnerable to a number of mammals. So there can be some problems associated that, and there can be scab that can cause indentations from the outside. But if there's no evidence of any damage on the inside, then it's a growth issue, and it's something similar to hollow heart that came from last year when we had all of the moisture in June and things dried down in July. So that's really one what we call it's a physiological problem as opposed to an insect or a disease. She shouldn't experience it this year. I wouldn't worry about it particularly.
Okay, great. Well, try the beets again. Sue from Carlton planted a rhododendron last year, mulched in fall, and now its top leaves are brown. There are green leaves on the bottom. Is wondering about pruning it.
Same kind of thing, more than likely, maybe not real hardy for our area, depending on what variety she got. I would hold off on pruning it for this year or new growth if she's pruning it. However, if there's dead branches, things like that, she can go in and take those off right now.
Okay.
You know, Tom, they really don't prune up quite as well as an awful lot of shrubs do, so you can't have your expectations too high there. And your advice on pruning a new growth is exceptional. That's good.
All right.
Astute.
Oh, okay.
Very astute.
Very authority.
Okay, let's move on. This week's tour takes us to the garden of a Duluth pastor who also gains and shares meaning by growing bonsai.
Hello, my name is Terry White and welcome to my garden. I live here on the east side of Duluth near this East High School, and this is my bonsai garden. I've been doing bonsai for about 15 years, and I would say the driving force behind it is I've always enjoyed miniature things. So even as a kid, I did models and I made things in miniature all the time. Pine trees and spruce trees and cedar trees and tamarack trees are all good hardy species to use for bonsai. I like doing the natives just because they're less work. Tamaracks are great. They're hardy. They throw out a lot of new buds when you try to push the buds back, and so they're fun to do, but they get a little hairy, like I said. Certainly there's things that are more harsh and rugged, and that's really kind of the thing I like, but in the midst of a total bonsai garden, it's nice to have some things that are a little bit different. So the forest planting is a little bit more gentle and serene, and just a scene that would draw you in and make you imagine being in the boundary waters. It's nice to have a little bit of both the big and the small and the harsh and the sweet and gentle. And this is a spruce tree that I gathered. Spruce trees, they have what's nice about them is they have the small foliage. These are all wired down, and you can't necessarily see that, but the wire is used to give that presentation of age in old mature trees. This is a Shimpaku juniper. This is also called known as a phoenix graft, where you take an old piece of dead wood and you take a new piece of Shimpaku and you take all the bark off of one side, and then you attach it to the dead wood, and as it heals, it just kind of grabs on. So here's another a nice little addition to the garden, the Miss Kim lilac that has the smaller versions of leaves and the smaller variety of foliage, and so that's more advantageous to making a bonsai out of. So it has its moment to shine, and that's great. It is a tree that was found that way. Years and years of growing in some tough conditions made it look like a windswept tree, which was one of the styles of bonsai, is windswept. It literally lived in a rock bowl. So it was kind of a bonsai out in nature before I ever found it, because when I got it, I literally just lifted it up. I would say it's 275, 300 years old. That's just your pretty standard boxwood. People would use those in a hedge. This is the old ginkgo. It's called chi, and usually a ginkgo has to be at least 100 years old before it starts doing that kind of thing. So it is a really old ginkgo. The size of that trunk is spectacular. And then in front of it is just a little miniature cotoneaster that looks like a nice little apple tree, because it's all about scale. You know, you can never really do an oak tree as a bonsai, because it's, no matter what you do, it's got a 8-inch leaf. This is called a crescent pot, and this is a tamarack that I gathered. So you can see the kind of the same twisty nature of all those things, to try and create some movement, some sense of movement, because what excites the eye is when things move. That's a dwarf flowering quince, which is actually really hard to find. It is a Japanese variety. It gets those beautiful red flowers on it. Japanese maples are very popular to use for bonsai, mostly because they have the ability to grow some tight foliage. They leaf reduce exceptionally well. Bonsai is really all about managing health. Like, there's points when you just let them grow freely and you let them get as healthy as you can let them get, and then there's years when you work them hard to redesign something. So you have to kind of balance working on things and letting things just be.
That was a great place to visit. We really enjoyed our tour there, and thanks to Terry White.
Love his philosophy too. You want to make gardening enjoyable, and you don't want to make it a stressful activity, really.
That's right.
Something we enjoyed.
All right. Well, lots of questions we're going to try and get through real quickly. Sheila from Duluth wants to know if it's too late to prune a hydrangea.
No.
Okay. Julie from Duluth wants to know, how do I prepare the soil for landscaping around the base of a large spruce stump?
Well, there she's going to have to get in there and get underground, chop some of that out. The stump cutter is really great, and then a little additional nitrogen to break down that woody material.
All right. Tricia from Duluth has planted echinacea, I always say that one wrong, and lavender many times, but they have never come back. What did I do wrong?
Both are zone 4, and lavender especially, very difficult to get to survive in our region, but a lot of the echinacea that have been rushed to market here in the last few years are not really hardy in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, so borderline. Maybe look for some hardier varieties like the old purple coneflower. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ron from Duluth wants to know how long grass seed is good for.
You know, a lot of that depends on how you store it. Store it cool and dry, and probably at least 3 years, maybe a little longer.
All right, great. Mary from Duluth has a Moroccan mint with little white fly eggs on the underside of the leaves and wants to know how to get rid of them, and will the white flies spread outside?
That's a good question, because she's got them inside, so we have to eliminate virtually all of the chemical pesticides. I think she wants to try something like an insecticidal soap. Safers would be
Okay.
a good idea.
All right.
But remember, it's edible. Be extremely careful.
Okay. Judy from Clocape planted a stiletto magnolia bush 3 years ago. Finally got one bloom this year. Hooray. Is there a fertilizer she can use to get more blooms?
Well, stellata is
Thank
the
you.
long-term, has been around a long time in magnolias, and she just has to be patient. It's going to take a while, but the thing she wants to do is make sure going into the fall and into the winter she has good nutrition and good water moisture available, because that, like a lot of our other spring bloomers, sets their buds in the fall. So.
All right.
Be a little careful about the nitrogen in the
Yep.
fall, but a little nitrogen now wouldn't hurt.
All right. Well, we've told you about some types of potatoes you might want to try. Now here's Bob with a how-to on planting and growing them.
This isn't true seed. This is really stem tissue. We can tell it's stem tissue because of the buds here, but nonetheless we use this generic term seed potatoes. And you're going to make some cuts, and you want a nice piece, 2 to 3 ounces, with at least a minimum of 2 buds. And after you've made your cuts, in many cases, we're going to allow this surface to heal. The term we use is suberize, prevents the soil-borne microbes, the fungi and the bacteria, from attacking the seed piece before it has the chance to actually emerge from the soil. Particularly early in the season, particularly when soils are heavy, wet, cool, definitely a good idea to make your seed bead cuts at least 2 days prior to planting. And this is a smaller tuber, so this could go in the ground as it is. Now, if you've got a very large tuber and relatively small sprouts, you're going to be successful very carefully placing this in the ground, and then just being extremely careful never to break off that growing tip. If you break off the growing tips, the seed piece is just going to rot on you. So really, you want a seed piece that has buds emerging at this point where there isn't a lot of risk of rubbing them off. You want to be sure that you've got good nutrient levels. Many of our soils in northeastern Minnesota, northwestern Wisconsin are deficient in potassium, so you want to make sure that those nutrient levels have been corrected prior to planting. They're just going to go in the ground about 2 inches. We're going to spread them out about 2 to 3 feet. If you have the option, and if you want to put it so the stem's up, you save the plant a little bit of trouble of coming from the bottom on up. Once again, it's protected in the ground, and we can expect that sprout to emerge within maybe the next 10 days or so, and at that point, hopefully, we're beyond any risk of frost. And weed control eliminates competition for the plant, but it also minimizes the pressure from some insect populations. As the plant emerges, then we're going to be hilling, or actually adding some soil to the outside to encourage additional growth from the tip, and additional tuber formation along the stems. We're trying to hill the plant, so we're trying to encourage the plant to stretch for the sun. So we want to elongate that stem because it's off that stem tissue that we're going to get tuber set and tuber formation. The roots are going to be farther down, but we want it controlled to encourage the stem elongation and then also to protect from sunlight exposure. So the hilling process is going to come on just a little bit later, probably the first hilling in late June or something of that nature. So we cannot hill too early, and we might hill twice in the course of a season, and that should be adequate. We've got a nice window between about May 15th and June 15th when we can really get potatoes in the ground here and expect to be very successful.
Okay, still time to plant.
Plenty of time.
All right, great information. Thanks, Bob. Well, as we've said before, gardeners are a generous lot. Here are some of the lovely photos they've provided. Lois Johnson shares these dwarf iris, which recently popped in the Hayward, Wisconsin garden of her mother. From Catherine Algren in Duluth, 2 different showy climbing roses making their way across her garden trellis. Mary and Matt Budarak of Hermantown offer a great mix of foliage in this arrangement, while their back flower bed shines with a bold, bright mix of blooms. And they don't overlook the small things either, as evidenced in this quaint fairy garden setting. And from Effie in Virginia, spring blooms of daffodil, hyacinth, and tulip give way to a stunning pink rose, a show of lilies and liatris, and this collection of later summer blossoms. Her containers run the gamut from a deity with a full head of sedum hair to the standout pink petunias that sit beside the birdhouse. If you have outstanding garden fare to share, send pictures to greatgardening@wdse.org. Thanks again for those pictures. They're always lovely to see. We'll be seeing blooms like that very soon.
Very soon.
And we're starting to already. Well, if we didn't get your question on the air, we apologize. We'll try to get to it next week, but we do want to thank our phone volunteers and, of course, all the great information that you guys provide, and you really make it fun to learn. So thanks so much for helping us out here. All right, that's going to do it from all of us here at Great Gardening. Thanks for watching and enjoy the garden.